Furthermore, as we've already kind of mentioned, there is a similarity here in that the beast here is kind of a construction of at least 3 of the beasts that are mentioned in Daniel chapter 7, which makes it kind of this terrible, disgusting-looking beast. Right? It's like a leopard, but it's got feet like a bear, and it's got a mouth like a lion. Which stops you. It has one mouth with 7 heads. Because it says a mouth like a lion, not like mouths like a lion. Right? Again, I don't think we're meant to be understanding this any sort of literally, but the mouth, of course, has to do with this speaking of blasphemous names, which we'll see more about that. Now, obviously, even futurists, right, some of those strict futurists that would say Revelation has a lot of literal things to it, would say this is symbolic of something else. That there's not going to be in the future this huge 7-headed beast, but instead that it probably symbolizes a ruler or rulers or world power. Right? And so that's one thing that seems to be a common idea, is that there's something here related to those kingdoms of Daniel chapter 7, and that's related here to this beast. To reinforce whose side this beast is on, the dragon provides this beast with some authority, with some power. And so the beast gets its authority, gets its power from the dragon. So the power that this beast has is not in itself. But of course, even the power that the dragon has is only the power that God allows them. So neither of these really have true power, but they do have some referred power that they're allowed to exercise. One of the things we again have to ask is this beast meant to symbolize a person or something impersonal? Some have suggested that what this refers to is a figure known as the Antichrist. And so a very common theme in a lot of apocalyptic literature is this future world ruler who will come forth, will kind of set himself up as God. And passages like 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, Mark chapter 13 are referred to suggest that we should be looking for someone who will have world domination in the future, kind of a one world ruler. But when we think about how the term Antichrist is used in Scripture, that's not exactly how John uses it. Let's flip over to 1 John. And if somebody read 1 John chapter 2, verse 18. Somebody else get 2 John 7, please. 1 John 2:18. I'm pretty sure there is an 18th verse in John chapter 2. And somebody else get 2 John 7.
Children, it is the last hour, and as you've heard, the Antichrist is coming.
For many deceivers have gone out into the world. Those who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh. This is the deceiver and the Antichrist.
All right, Jordan, could you go back and read the other half of it?
Children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard, the Antichrist is coming. So now many Antichrists have come. Therefore, we know that it is the last hour. All right, so the point I wanted to make had to do with come out of that second part of that verse. All right, so John suggests that there will be many antichrists. Right? And now, again, what 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 has to do with this, hey, that's in Thessalonians, we're doing Revelation. But this idea of there will be a lot of people that will be these antichrists. But from 2 John 7, what is the main message, or what's the main thing that makes these people antichrists? All right, they're deceiving, but
They don't confess Jesus.
They don't confess what about Jesus? No. I mean, that he's come in the flesh. All right? And so these were people during John's time who suggested Jesus only seemed to be fleshly, only seemed to be human, that he was actually a spirit being. And so those people, John says, were Antichrist. So the way John uses it doesn't refer to this kind of one world ruler. So, it makes it a little bit difficult to suggest that that's necessarily what he's talking about in chapter 13. That's not necessarily a term he would have used. Additionally, if the beasts of chapter 13 and chapter 17 are the same, it suggests that this is a conglomeration of kings. So more like an empire instead of a specific person. Right? And so to necessarily compare this to the Antichrist, it doesn't seem to fit for the first beast. Right? That seems more like it's an empire or worldwide power. So, disgusting looking beast. 7 heads, 10 horns, 10 crowns, made up of a leopard, a bear, a lion, working for the devil, blasphemous names on its head. But John draws us into one of its heads in particular. What's unique or different about one head of this beast? It was wounded. Right? It had a head that seemed to have received a death blow, is the way that the New Revised Standard puts it, but it had been healed. Now, perhaps here we have kind of another parody or imitation, because there is a way that this mortal wound that had been healed, or this appeared, what's the verse? Seemed to have received a death blow. That phrase could also be translated as slain unto death. And so what we might have here is kind of another parody or imitation, because we saw something else that appeared to be slain in Revelation, or slaughtered. The lamb. Right? And so the lamb, back in chapter 5, looking as if it had been slaughtered. And so here's this head that looks as if it has been slain or slaughtered. Right? And so again, kind of this parody. Perhaps even, later on it'll say it came from a sword. Might also be kind of a parody of Jesus' side wound, right? Because of the, he's hanging on the cross and they pierce his side. So maybe that might be another part of this. And also, of course, there's that kind of imitation resurrection. Right? It looked like he had been healed, or it looked like he had been dead, but healed. So what does this mean? Well, again, if we take chapter 17 to help us figure this out, and the heads are kings, one of these kings received a death blow, but it was healed. All right? And so that's kind of what's suggested by it. One of its heads looked like it received a death blow, but was healed. And this imitation resurrection brings about amazement in the whole earth, and causes the whole earth to follow the beast. Now here too we have to be careful about thinking about the whole earth here as the whole earth. Right? Because sometimes the whole earth was used just to refer to the known world of those people, and so the Roman Empire. But that isn't so much the point as it is this imitation resurrection causes people to unite themselves with the beast. And so it draws people to it. But not only are they drawn to the first beast, they are drawn to the dragon as well. So through the beast, they are really worshiping the dragon, even if they don't realize it, even if they're not doing it intentionally. And I think we've talked about before this idea about, when we were talking about the synagogue of Satan, there aren't really that many true Satan worshipers, right? People that actually would claim to be worshiping Satan. But, a lot of people will give honor to Satan through other types of things. Well, something similar is what John is describing. By connecting themselves to the first beast and placing the first beast as kind of this idol in their hearts, they are worshiping the dragon. And they are also worshiping that beast and say, who is like the beast and who can fight against it? And so again, this kind of idolatrous worship that we're seeing of the dragon, but also of the beast. And in saying something like, who is like the beast, we again have a odd echo of this imitation. In Exodus chapter 15, for example, verse 11, in the song that Moses sings, there is the phrase, who is like the Lord. And several times throughout the Old Testament, there are phrases, there are statements, right, that there is no one like the Lord. Right? There is no other God but God. And so maybe here we also kind of hear an echo of this in this claim of who is like the beast. Right? The beast has kind of become everything for these people. And furthermore, this idea of who can fight against it. Well, where does the beast get his power from? All right, ultimately God, but through the dragon. All right, so who can fight the beast is kind of like, well, who can fight the dragon? But we've already seen who can fight the dragon. All right, the forces of God can fight the dragon. But still there is this idea that the dragon and the beast want to give the impression that they cannot be conquered. That they alone will be successful. There's nothing like them. Right? And so the idea is that these people have become wrapped up in this idea like the beast is all there is. The beast is the true power. Even though we know the dragon is the power behind the beast's throne. And so it's kind of focusing on this worldly kind of concept. We return then back again to this idea of blasphemy. The beast was given a mouth. Notice here there's a lot of passive voice throughout this. And the beast was given. It was allowed. And ultimately, of course, it reminds us that God is in control. The beast doesn't have any power in itself. And so through this mouth, it's uttering haughty and blasphemous words. Again, those words that are offensive to God are offensive or are claims of deity. Now here too, another interesting kind of parody. What animal is the beast's mouth like? It's like a lion. Right? So it's using that lion mouth to utter these blasphemies. Now, we might think of the lion in sense of the roar or the nobility, but in the context of Revelation, what else might we think of when we hear lion? Lion of the tribe of Judah. And so, it sounds divine, perhaps, right? And so he uses this mouth to sound like he's divine. And so we have this kind of lion-lamb dichotomy because the second beast will have two horns like the lamb. We know the first beast and the second beast are very closely tied together. So we have this lion-lamb parody again. And it is allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. Where have we seen this 42 months before? Or what else can we convert 42 months to? 3.5 years. Do you remember where we've seen this before? Back in chapter 11. Chapter 11, the time of the trampling of the holy city, the temple's outer court, as well as the time of the witnesses, right, the two witnesses who are ministering in sackcloth. Is this the same time? Right? Is the 42 months here the same time as chapter 11? It doesn't have to be, but it seems quite likely. It makes sense that this would be another way of looking at chapter 11 because of what this 42 months will be. That it's exercising authority about blasphemy and then making war. And so the first beast blasphemes. He's speaking against, particularly against God, against God's name, and against His dwelling, or those who dwell in heaven. And so again, these claims of power, these claims of divinity. Now the phrase translated in the New Revised Standard as His dwelling could also be understood as His tabernacle. And we're calling that original construction of Moses, where God met Moses in the most holy place, in the holy place, what becomes the forerunner to the temple. We should not see, however, against His dwelling and those who dwell in heaven as kind of two different things. As we'll see later on, His dwelling is with His people. We can talk about, the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. We can talk about God dwelling in the church. But where God dwells is synonymous with the people who dwell. And so not only does the first beast speak against God, he speaks against God's people as well. He speaks against them, but is also allowed to make war against them. He makes war on the saints, but not only does he make war on the saints, he also is successful at doing it. Which again draws us back to the trampling of the holy city, the trampling of the outer courts. But also we have this conquering aspect. He'll make war on the saints and conquer them. The beast will appear to conquer for a time, but what are the readers of Revelation to think of when we hear about conquering? No, not so. I wasn't thinking of so much of the horse guys. This idea of conquer or overcome. I've heard it 7 times. In 7 letters. Right? To each of the 7 letters of the churches in Asia, there's this reminder, to the one who conquers, to the one overcome. Right? So it'll appear like the beast will conquer, but who's truly going to conquer? Right? The one who conquers according to those 7 letters. There's truly conquering versus the conquering that's done here. And so, again, allowed to make war probably for the same 42 months. And so we should include that, allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. And this conquering, this making war, is the same thing. But note, the beast is also given authority over every tribe and people and language and nation. The 5th of the 7 times that this shows up in Revelation, this phrase. It is